Previously, we saw how threats against Finland raised alarms worldwide, but what truly caught attention was the twisted history used to justify those threats. Now, the picture deepens. Russia's narrative digs into the past, painting Finland as a dangerous enemy tied to dark alliances. But is this portrayal honest, or a calculated distortion? Dmitry Medvedev, known as the voice echoing Vladimir Putin's intentions, didn't hesitate to launch a fierce attack against Finland's history. He claimed Finland was obsessed with revenge, determined to undo the losses from their bitter conflict with the Soviet Union in 1939 to 1940. Medvedev accused Finland of rushing headlong into war alongside Nazi Germany in 1941, aligning itself with a regime that brought devastation across Europe. He reminded readers that Finland once cooperated with Nazi forces, even participating in the brutal siege of Leningrad. The cold echoes of those dark days still linger in his words, urging listeners to see Finland as an aggressive, hostile state clinging to Nazi sympathies. Yet, beneath this accusation lies a vast silence, crucial facts carefully omitted to fit a dangerous storyline. The story Medvedev refuses to tell is that the Soviet Union ignited the conflict that set Finland on this path. According to well-respected sources like the Encyclopaedia Britannica, war broke out because the Soviet government demanded parts of Finnish land. Finland, a small nation caught in the storm, refused to surrender its sovereignty. The Soviet Union responded with invasion, forcing Finland into a desperate fight for survival. Eventually, after fierce fighting, Finland agreed to peace through the Treaty of Moscow, ceding some territory but maintaining its independence. It was in this context of lost lands and broken peace that Finland's wartime alliance with Nazi Germany was born, not out of ideology, but from a desperate attempt to reclaim what was theirs. This is the context Medvedev buries beneath his carefully crafted words. It's a selective memory that serves only one purpose: to justify aggression by rewriting history. As often happens in this propaganda playbook, some facts are true, but many are left in shadows, guardian of a one-sided tale that paints Russia as innocent and surrounded by threats. Is this just another step in a dangerous game of misinformation? Can history be so easily twisted to serve a present-day ambition? And most unsettling of all, what comes after this rewriting, when the line between fact and fiction blurs completely? The political landscape in Europe is growing increasingly tense, and there's a burning question that stirs anxiety in every heart: could Finland be the next target of aggression? As the war in Ukraine continues to unfold, Vladimir Putin appears to be shifting his sights. In a recent alarming statement, Dmitry Medvedev, a prominent figure in the Russian government, issued thinly veiled threats against Finland, hinting at a looming conflict that could echo history's darkest days. Medvedev, who has long been seen as a mouthpiece for the Kremlin's agenda, described Finland's past associations with Nazi Germany, referring to historical events to manipulate public opinion. His message resonates with an engaging alarm: could Finland truly be driven back into a trap of totalitarian history? He insinuated that Finland's actions today mirror Russophobia born out of its wartime past, feeding into a narrative aimed at portraying the nation as an unwavering threat. In a world that loathes Nazism, this rhetoric raises chilling similarities to those made against Ukraine. Recall the flow of propaganda. In February 2023, Putin brazenly labeled Ukraine's government as harboring neo-Nazi elements, despite evidence to the contrary. According to a BBC investigation, only a fraction of voters supported far-right candidates in recent elections, an assertion revealing the stark contrast between claims and reality. Moreover, it's critical to note that Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, is of Jewish descent, a fact that starkly contradicts the narrative we're led to believe. As the world holds its breath, we must ask ourselves, are these accusations simply a strategic move to justify aggression? Putin continues to wield the term neo-Nazi like a weapon against any nation perceived as aligning with the West. Is he setting the stage for a repeat of history, using Finland as the next pawn in a high-stakes game, all while shrouded in the cloak of self-righteousness? As the situation escalates, Medvedev's ominous warnings paint a grim picture. He claims Finland's fate hangs by a thread due to its growing ties with the West, once again invoking fears of past affiliations. Could this mean that the brutal echoes of history are rumbling back to life? What actions remain to be seen as the narrative unfolds, both for Russia's ambitions and for Finland's sovereignty? The air thickens with tension, the world watches, waiting for the next move. The world despises Nazis, Putin's message goes, so it would understand if Russia attacks a country, as long as he keeps labeling them Nazis. Now, through Medvedev, Putin is casting the same dark shadow over Finland. This eerie reflection between Ukraine and Finland is deeply unsettling. But the Nazi accusation isn't the only mirror Medvedev holds up. The Institute for the Study of War highlights that Medvedev accuses Finland of oppressing ethnic Russians, an echo of Russia's earlier claims against Ukraine. He mourns the lost closeness between Finland and Russia, especially for those living near the border, who he says once thrived on bilateral trade yet now suffer from what he calls stupid policies by Finnish leaders. These words reek of the same grievances Russia voiced against Ukraine just before the invasion. Amid these accusations, one phrase jumps out: root causes. It's Putin's favorite vague excuse to keep his war going. Every time peace talks surface, he points to unresolved root causes to dodge any real ceasefire. He used this with the former U.S. president in Alaska and continues to wield it as a shield against peace. But what exactly are these root causes? Sometimes it's Ukraine's alleged Nazism. Other times, it's the threat of Ukraine's embrace of Western ideals. Medvedev draws Finland into this twisted logic, painting it with the same brush as Ukraine. Could this be the start of a new chapter in an old story? What if the root cause is something far bigger than claims of extremism? The answer hides in the shadows, threatening to redraw the map of Europe once again. Since the dawn of Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a pressing question has echoed through the halls of global politics: who will face his wrath next? While the world watches Ukraine's struggle against overwhelming odds, a chilling new threat emerges. Could it be Finland that becomes the next target of Russia's aggression? In a recent article published by the Russian news agency TASS, Dmitry Medvedev, a key figure in Putin's regime, soundly warned Finland about the dire consequences of any confrontation with Russia. He ominously suggested that Finland's meddling could lead to the annihilation of its statehood. This rhetorical flourish is steeped in historical manipulation, reminiscent of Putin's own tactics against Ukraine. Medvedev alluded to Finland's past ties with Nazi Germany during World War II, framing the nation as a dangerous aggressor rather than addressing the nuanced historical context. But what Medvedev neglects to mention is vital: Finland, rather than seeking conflict, found itself defending against the Soviet invasion during a time when it was merely striving to maintain its sovereignty. Sensory memories of that biting winter air and the fear gripping a nation during the Russo-Finnish War linger as a backdrop to his narrative. Why would Finland, a nation that once fought to preserve itself, again be branded as the enemy in this geopolitical chess game? Medvedev's rhetoric implies Finland's alignment with extremist ideologies, a line echoing Putin's baseless claims about Ukraine being overrun by Nazi sympathizers. However, the reality is starkly different. Proponents of far-right ideologies hold minimal sway in Finland, just as they do in Ukraine. It is a tactic, one that relies on fear, distortion, and the shadow of history, to indict both nations. The question emerges: how far will these accusations go to justify another act of aggression? As Medvedev continues to fan the flames of Russophobia, he outlines Finland's alleged betrayal and authoritarian tendencies, mirroring the logic used against Ukraine. The irony is palpable: by attempting to sever ties that once flourished, Russia paints itself as the wronged party. With each statement, the echoes of deceit grow louder. Could these claims serve as a veil for a darker, more aggressive plan? But Medvedev uses a familiar phrase, root causes, which reveals an unsettling truth. Just as Putin argues that Ukraine's Western leanings fuel his motives, the same rationale is applied to Finland's recent NATO membership, which threat to Russia's security fabric. It begs the question: what if this is merely the beginning? As Finland embraced NATO in April 2023, ending decades of neutrality, the tides had shifted dramatically. The once benevolent rhetoric of cooperation soured into threats and humiliation. How long before the tensions escalate into something uncontrollable? With Finland now aligned with the West, how does Russia see its neighbor through a lens of fear and resentment? The conclusion seems inescapable: Putin's expansionist ambitions could indeed lead to new conflicts. The narrative unfurls like a chilling wind through the forests of Suomi. Will history repeat itself? As the shadows of the past loom ever larger? As sentiment turns into urgent action, the world watches and waits. The haunting question lingers in the air: who's next in the Kremlin's sights? Following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, a chilling narrative begins to unfold. Amidst the chaos, Vladimir Putin's Russia has leveled threats not just at Ukraine, but aimed squarely at other nations that have dared to align with the West, among them, Finland. In a provocative piece aired through Russian news outlet TASS, Dmitry Medvedev, an influential voice and loyal ally of Putin, serves a stark warning. He warns Finland that their history of aligning with Nazi Germany during World War II, a time when they sought to reclaim territory from the Soviet Union, has left them vulnerable. But is this really about history? Or is it merely a pretext for aggression against their current aspirations and alliances? As Medvedev clamored about imagined threats from a Russophobic Finland, could this rhetoric simply be smoke and mirrors? Just as with Ukraine, accusations flew, labeling Finland as a nation harboring dangerous ideologies and succumbing to Western influences. The chilling parallel between Ukraine and Finland narrows, raising eyebrows and igniting fears. Medvedev's narrative reinforced the Kremlin's perennial claims that history repeats itself, that threats lie at their borders, and that the West is to blame for Russia's desperation. This isn't just name-calling. It's a carefully staged drama suggesting Finland, like Ukraine, must reconsider its position lest it provoke aggression. Now, with NATO's expansion stretching to Finland's doorstep, Medvedev paints a grim picture, one that could justify military incursion. He argues that this alliance is a betrayal of past bonds, stripping Finland of benefits they once enjoyed. But could these claims, lacking in context, be nothing more than a harbinger of future conflict? Medvedev's rhetoric echoes the justification used before, as the Kremlin seeks to create an environment that legitimizes aggression and war. Words like root causes echo ominously, reminiscent of the justifications used for invading Ukraine. Are these merely propaganda tactics to absolve Russia of accountability? As Finland's ties to NATO deepen, the fear intensifies that it could become the next battleground in Russia's quest for dominance, a stark warning masked as a critique. The world holds its breath. Will Putin's ambitions drive him towards yet another confrontation, this time with the Nordic nation? As the tension mounts and shadows of history loom large, what will be the ultimate fate of Finland in this dangerous game of geopolitical chess? In a world embroiled in chaos and conflict, a dark shadow looms over Finland. With Russia still reeling from its losses in Ukraine, a chilling question arises: is Finland next? Once a bastion of neutrality, this Scandinavian nation has forged unprecedented ties with the West, casting off its historical hesitations and boldly joining NATO. But in Russia, this shift is seen not as an alliance, but as a betrayal. Can aggressive rhetoric from Russian leaders reshape the narrative into one where Finland is painted as a threat? Dmitry Medvedev, a key figure in the Kremlin and a steadfast ally of Vladimir Putin, recently penned an ominous article warning Finland of dire consequences. His haunting words hinted at a revival of long-buried tensions, invoking memories of Finland's ties to Nazi Germany from decades past. But do these claims hold any truth, or are they merely a tool to justify aggression? As he rattles off assertions of a Russophobic Finland, alarm bells ring. Medvedev's venomous rhetoric echoes earlier justifications for the war in Ukraine. The Arctic chill of misinformation fills the air. Are these accusations a means to normalize conflict with NATO nations, creating an environment ripe for military escalation? This manipulation of history paints Finland as an aggressor, dismissing the complexities of its past, like the tumultuous Russo-Finnish war that pitted the two nations against each other. What Medvedev omits is that Finland desired peace and was dragged into alliances out of desperation. Now, sword-rattling threatens to pull Finland back into a confrontation it thought was long buried. What's truly chilling is Medvedev's veiled encouragement of aggression. By suggesting Finland is courting disaster with its Western leanings, he emboldens the idea that Russia might respond with force. It's not merely rhetoric, it sends a message that echoes through the corridors of power. Any border incidents are ripe for exploitation, and Finland's sovereignty hangs by a thread. As tensions rise, the parallel between Finland and Ukraine sharpens. Just as Putin labeled Ukraine's government as a fascist regime, will he set the stage for an invasion of Finland next? The game of chess is set, but at what cost? Finland is now faced with a chilling reality. Medvedev's article constructs a narrative where Finland's very existence threatens Russia. Can it escape the backlash of such dangerous geopolitical maneuvering? As echoes of orders ring in the air, the looming question persists: is this how the story of conflict unfolds anew? In a world where narratives are shaped through propaganda, every action carries weight, and every word can be a catalyst for war. The once peaceful land of Finland, now a pawn on the greater chessboard of international politics, finds itself maneuvering through a deadly dance with history repeating itself. The growing tension between Russia and Finland raises a haunting question: is Finland ready to face off against its formidable neighbor? As the world watches, Russia's military loss in Ukraine has not quelled its aggression. With the war raging, Russian officials are ramping up rhetoric. Should Finland brace itself for an invasion? While Finland's military might not rival Russia's, the geography offers a semblance of a safeguard. Global firepower ranks Russia as the second strongest military in the world, while Finland sits at the 48th spot. Its active forces consist of 24,000 personnel, a stark contrast to Russia's staggering 1.32 million active troops and 2 million reserves. How can a country with 870,000 reserves despite a compulsory military service combat this disparity? Finland's military budget trails Russia's by a staggering $120 billion. With thousands more aircraft, tanks, and artillery, Russia's might is overwhelming, even after accounting for its losses in Ukraine. Despite these figures, Finland's resolve cannot be quantified. Sisu, a Finnish term symbolizing fierce determination, embodies their spirit in this escalating conflict. Could the fierce will of a tiny nation withstand the might of a superpower? The numbers paint one picture. Yet, could they defy expectations? If history has taught us anything, it's that a motivated population can stand tall against daunting odds. What happens when sheer willpower collides with brute force? Are we witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in military history, one where Finland shows the world what it means to stand up for sovereignty? The answer may lie just beyond the horizon. In a world where shadows loom larger than men, a question lingers above the icy expanse of the Finnish landscape: could Finland stand against the might of Russia? The numbers suggest a swift victory for the Titan to the east. In terms of sheer military strength, Russia dwarfs Finland. But in the hearts of the Finns, a defiant fire burns. Are they ready to defend their homeland? In a revealing May article, the Times shed light on this fierce spirit embodied in the Finnish term sisu, a concept that translates loosely to grit or resilience. Sisu is our superpower, said Pasi Radikainen, a senior civil defense planner. The grit runs deep in the Finnish psyche, nourished by centuries of survival beneath harsh skies and the looming presence of Russia. You need guts, Radikainen insisted, capturing Finland's determination to face any threat head-on. This mental readiness, twisted into accusations of brutality by Kremlin officials, belies the real truth. The Finnish people support conscription with overwhelming numbers, over 80%. This unity ensures that many are trained and ready to rise as a bulwark against aggression. Every time Putin speaks, we remember, Radikainen declared. We don't excel at anxiety, we excel at preparation. With echoes of history at their backs, the Finns have sharpened their resolve. Fast forward to 2025, and Finland is not idling. UNN reported on August 25 that the nation is feverishly reinforcing its borders, erecting an extensive 124-mile fence. This is a decisive move against the surge of undocumented immigrants, a symptom of Russia's hybrid warfare tactics. Medvedev's rhetoric deliberately obscures this nuance, as Russia often sidesteps responsibility, perpetuating a narrative of victimhood. Tensions are rising, especially after a chaotic closure of border checkpoints back in November 2023. Yet, Finland stands unwavering, prepared for the potential onslaught. As the border remains tightly sealed, a sense of urgency fills the air. With each decision, they inch closer to standing firm against an aggressor they cannot afford to underestimate. What lies ahead when old scars stir and the specter of conflict looms once more? Feel the icy wind bite at your cheeks as you ponder the grisly history beneath the surface, where the ghosts of wars past whisper warnings of the storm that could come. Have the Finns truly fortified their resolve, or is the quiet before an inevitable tempest? Stay tuned as the winds of change continue to howl in the silence of the northern night. Just moments ago, we saw how Finland, once cautious, has now become a steadfast NATO ally, hosting a regional land forces command center near Russia's border. Despite Putin's repeated condemnations labeling these moves as provocations, few acknowledge that Russia's own aggressive actions pushed Finland into this alliance. Now, Dmitry Medvedev, Putin's trusted voice, signals what few dare to say outright: conflict with Finland is no longer hypothetical, it is looming. His recent declarations lay the groundwork of justification, branding Finland with the same dark accusations once leveled at Ukraine. But unlike Ukraine, Finland is not standing alone. The fierce resilience ingrained in its people, combined with the shield of NATO's collective defense, makes it a much tougher challenge. While Finland fortifies its defenses and steel itself for the storm ahead, another battleground ignites nearby, Poland. Earlier this month, the skies over Poland were pierced by an unprecedented wave of drones launched by Russia. This is not just an isolated incident, it's a clear assault on a NATO member, a direct challenge to the alliance's unity and strength. What followed this audacious attack has sent shockwaves across Europe and beyond. The tension is rising, and the question hangs in the air: how will NATO respond when one member's soil is violated so brazenly? The silence of allied nations could shatter, or it might ignite the most decisive moment in recent European history. Stay tuned. The unfolding clash between NATO and Russia could redefine the balance of power on the continent, and deciding how this plays out could decide the future of millions. As tensions simmer and military strategies unfold, one question lingers in the air: is Finland the next target in Russia's quest for dominance? After years of escalating conflict, Finland feels the weight of history pressing down on its borders. The country stands resilient and ready to confront the shadows of an aggressor that won't back down. In November 2023, Finland made a decisive move, closing all its border checkpoints. Though two of these checkpoints were reopened shortly after, a stream of illegal immigrants continued to flood in, compelling the nation to tighten its defenses again by April 2025. Now, with Russia hovering ominously, the border remains firmly shut, a clear expression of Finland's resolve in the face of perceived threats. But Finland has not been idle in this precarious environment. Reports indicate that the Finnish defense forces are working diligently to construct an intricate underground fortification system, blending living quarters with combat spaces. This hidden network is designed to shield the population from drones, artillery strikes, and a barrage of weaponry that Russia could unleash in a potential conflict. Finland, astutely aware of the lessons learned from the ongoing war in Ukraine, prepares for any eventuality. Vladimir Putin's regime, under the watchful eye of his spokesperson Dmitry Medvedev, may be sowing seeds of doubt regarding Finland's alliances and intentions. Medvedev's menacing rhetoric hints at a looming confrontation, but Finland is more perceptive than its adversaries realize. It is fully aware of the geopolitical landscape and understands that its NATO membership places it under the protection of Article 5, which promises solidarity among member states. Thus, while Finland readies itself, it does so with the backing of its allies. The irony isn't lost on anyone: it was Putin's aggressive maneuvers in Ukraine that nudged Finland into NATO's embrace. As Finland participates vigorously in NATO exercises, establishing a new land command center in Mikkeli, the cataclysm of prolonged tension unfurls with every passing day. Will this unwavering preparation be enough to deter Russia, or will it escalate into a tumultuous confrontation, echoing the echoes of history intertwined with the modern world? The stakes are high. Finland isn't just fighting for its sovereignty, it's bracing itself against the tide of a revived imperial ambition. The outcome remains uncertain, as the air thickens with anxiety and anticipation. What lies ahead for this finely balanced Nordic nation in a time where memories of past wars loom large? As the echoes of war resonate through the streets of Ukraine, a haunting question emerges: who's next? With Vladimir Putin's disastrous invasion leaving Russia reeling from unexpected military losses, a wave of threats surfaces aimed at the West. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, even Sweden, none are spared. But this time, the spotlight seems to pivot towards a new target: Finland. In a revealing article released on September 8, Dmitry Medvedev, Putin's loyal ally and purveyor of propaganda, casts a foreboding shadow over Finland's sovereignty. Medvedev, once a president in his own right, now fills the role of Putin's mouthpiece, issuing chilling warnings cloaked in historical manipulation. Any confrontation with Russia, he proclaims, could end in the obliteration of Finnish statehood. But what's behind Medvedev's alarming rhetoric? In his statements, he resurrects grievances from the bygone era of World War II, suggesting that Finland's historical alliances with Nazi Germany still haunt its present. Yet, his portrayal lacks context. What he conveniently omits is that Finland was drawn into a fight against the Soviet Union, one prompted by aggression from the empire itself, an empire that sought to annex Finnish territory. Medvedev's claims sound ominous, like echoes from a past that Finland has long since moved on from. Yet, by nurturing a narrative that labels Finland as an adversary, he mirrors the tactics used to vilify Ukraine. His words invoke a strategy to paint any proximity to the West as treason, stoking fears of Nazism in a nation striving for peace and independence. But why all this historical revisionism? Medvedev implies that Finnish hostility is rooted in a historical thirst for revenge, a twisted retelling begging the question: is this a warning, or a pretext for aggression? As Finland grows closer to NATO, this threat emerges not just as a cautionary tale, but as foreshadowing of what might come next in Putin's relentless expansionist ideology. Could it be that through these threats, Putin aims to justify not just the past actions against Ukraine, but potential future clashes with Finland? This parallel raises an unnerving sense of foreboding. If today's enemies are labeled as relics of a vile history, who will be next on the chopping block of aggression? The narrative grows murkier, but one truth emerges: Vladimir Putin is scripting a new chapter in his saga of territorial ambitions, and it's the people of Finland who could be caught in the crossfire. What if you discovered that the next target in a relentless campaign of aggression was no longer a secret? Since the invasion of Ukraine exploded into a full-scale war, a chilling question haunts the world: who could be next? Despite unexpected military setbacks, Russia's leaders have pushed threats toward almost every neighboring country aligned with the West: Baltic states, Poland, Sweden. But now, a new name looms ominously: Finland. Until recently, Finland held its ground, balancing carefully between East and West for decades. Yet, an unsettling message from Dmitry Medvedev, a key figure in Russia's power circle, hints at a terrifying possibility. On September 8, Medvedev, once Russia's president but now the deputy chairman of its Security Council, published a stark warning. He claims that if Finland chooses to stand against Russia, its very existence as a nation could be wiped out. This isn't just boilerplate intimidation, it's a carefully crafted reminder dripping with historical accusations. Medvedev drags out old ghosts, accusing Finland of aligning with Nazi Germany during World War II, a painful chapter meant to smear Finland's reputation. He paints Finland as dangerously aggressive, thirsty for revenge because of the war fought between the Soviet Union and Finland decades ago. But there's a twist: he conveniently ignores why the conflict began. The Soviet Union, not Finland, instigated that war by demanding Finnish lands. When Finland refused, it faced invasion. Its alliance with Nazi Germany was born not from ideology but a desperate attempt to reclaim what was lost. The silence around these facts is deafening. Medvedev's narrative is a selective reimagining of history designed to justify threats by accusing Finland of unrepentant hostility and so-called Russophobia. He even claims Finland's thirst for profit against Russia has roots in Nazi times, a distortion crafted to stir fear and distrust. This same tactic mirrors what Russia said about Ukraine, branding it as a neo-Nazi stronghold to rationalize military invasion. Despite global fact-checking revealing these claims to be baseless, Russia doubles down. And now Finland finds itself trapped in the same rhetoric, painted as a revived enemy born from historic grievances. Medvedev's words do more than insult. He alleges that Finland persecutes ethnic Russians and is violently abandoning its ties with Moscow, a refrain nearly identical to accusations aimed at Ukraine before the conflict exploded. What binds these threats together is a single phrase: root causes. Putin and his allies love this phrase. They say these roots haven't been removed, justifying endless conflict. And what are those causes? The story points clearly to NATO's slow but steady push eastward. The expansion that Moscow fears represents a threat far greater than any ghost of history. It signals a Western embrace that could surround Russia with hostile borders. And here lies the bitter irony. After years of neutrality, Finland finally joined NATO in April 2023. The once balancing act has crumbled. Medvedev laments a lost era of mutual benefit, pretending Finland selfishly gained while throwing Russia under the bus. But beneath these words pulses a deeper fear: NATO's reach has arrived at Russia's doorstep. So, what happens next? Will Finland become the next battlefield, dragged into a conflict it long sought to avoid? Are we witnessing history repeat itself under a new guise of fear, propaganda, and strategic calculation? The air is tense, charged with possibilities that could reshape Europe's future. The clash is not just about borders. It's a battle over truth, history, and power, where carefully twisted stories ignite old wounds, and a silent drumbeat signals a storm looming on the horizon. Previously, we saw how Finland shut its border checkpoints in late 2023, reopening a few briefly before closing them again by April 2025. The relentless influx of unauthorized crossings kept the border sealed, signaling deep tensions with Russia and the Finnish resolve to guard its sovereignty from an ever-present threat. But what lies beneath this standoff goes far beyond fence lines and border patrols. In August, reports emerged revealing a bold Finnish strategy: the defense forces are crafting an underground fortress system. Imagine vast tunnels and bunkers where homes and military posts blend seamlessly beneath the earth, shielding Finns from drones buzzing overhead and artillery shells screaming through the sky. This subterranean network isn't just some Cold War relic. It's built on the harsh lessons engraved by the brutal conflict raging in Ukraine. Finland isn't waiting for threats to surface, it's burying its defenses, literally, to outlast any future assault. But even this vast underground armor might not be enough to withstand the full fury of Russia's military. Here's where the concept of root causes enters, a phrase Moscow deploys like a shield and a sword at once. Putin's invasion of Ukraine was partly triggered by fears of NATO's expanding influence. Now, Finland stands as a strange twist of fate. It's fully immersed in NATO, a family it might never have joined without the Ukrainian crisis shaking the region. That membership carries an ironclad promise, Article 5 of the NATO Treaty. Attack one member, and all respond. That pact may be Finland's ultimate safeguard. Far more potent than tunnels or tanks. Finland isn't just a passive participant in this alliance. It's stepping up aggressively. Mikkeli, a city nestled close to Russia's border, now hosts a new NATO regional land forces headquarters. Over the last 2 years, Finnish troops have thrown themselves into NATO drills with remarkable intensity. Putin rails against this as provocative. Yet, he overlooks a crucial truth: Finland's militarization and NATO integration stem directly from Russia's own menacing actions. The very fear Medvedev voices now was seeded years ago, by Russia's shadow looming over its neighbors. What does this underground fortress mean for the looming conflict? Could these hidden strongholds become the crucible where Finnish resilience outmatches brutal force? Will NATO's collective strength deter Russia's ambitions, or will the bear find new ways to claw its way in? The ground beneath Finland's feet might hold answers, deep, dark, and dangerous. But as tension ratchets higher, one truth emerges: Finland is no longer a quiet bystander. It's a sentinel, standing firm, ready for whatever comes next.